today, especially Jim for all the work you're doing. I really appreciate the county parties putting in the work. I mean, just going through the calendar like that, as folks who are volunteers, it just is amazing to have you all doing such work that helps candidates like myself going all across the state. So thank you so much. My name is Dylan Helmenstine. I'm running to be the next Wisconsin State Treasurer. I was the first LGBTQ member elected to my rural school board over in Wisconsin Heights. And the year after that, I was elected to the village board for Black Earth, where I have served as chair of the Plan Commission, Economic Development Committee, and the Emergency Management Committee as well. I just finished up a term as the president of our rural EMS service, and every month the chief would call me in to sign the checks to make sure the lights would stay on, and every month in the last year it's been getting harder to make ends meet for our service to get the ambulance out the door. And as you all know here, the news out of Portage is breaking my heart. It's getting harder every single year to keep rural education alive in Wisconsin. It's just getting harder in Wisconsin to keep things going, and we all know and feel this. We're really in a crisis in so many ways in our state when it comes to the most fundamental services in our communities. Education, emergency services, the roads. And our local communities need a partner in the state government that will make sure that we can get done what needs to be done so our communities are stable and safe and moving forward again. And like Jim said, it's time to bring that progressive history back to our state. Now, I'm running for Wisconsin State Treasurer because after years of working in my own community and with folks across the state in their own school boards and their own communities, these crises, they feel so local, but they are statewide. And we need to build that movement everywhere in the state to connect people's vision for a strong, progressive Wisconsin future. And this is not the first crisis that I have seen where our systems have failed us. In COVID, I was the supply manager for the state's personal protective equipment warehouse. We received millions of materials every day, over 150,000 square feet, and I was working with National Guard members as a citizen commander, making sure that we could get gloves and masks to nurses, CNAs in the nursing homes, teachers, and child care providers. And every single week, we were trying our hardest to show up for the people of Wisconsin, and every single week we saw how unprepared we were. And now we see all these ways that the national government is destroying these aspects of life that we took for granted. And in Wisconsin, what we need is to have a state government that is fighting back for the people, that is building up trust again, and that is delivering, again, like I said, that stable, safe life that people can build their American dream off of. Now, I'm running for Wisconsin State Treasurer because this is a statewide office with statewide reach. And I have a master's in public affairs and economics degree and used to work as a Medicaid financial analyst and auditor, building up systems of catching fraud, waste, and abuse. And when I got elected to the school board, even I was confused on how some of these funding systems were working. Yeah, I was confused trying to read the budget, trying to understand these rules. So how is somebody coming off a 12-hour shift as a nurse or just getting done milking the cows for the second time in the day supposed to then be a voter that feels confident in knowing what's going on? I was talking to Bill over there, and just the other day, we were at an EMS committee meeting, and a friend of mine who has never voted the same way for president as I was saying to me, Dylan, this is how they should be using that extra budget money in the surplus. And he went down all these ways we could support the schools. And I said, Tom, that's exactly what the Democrats are offering. And then he said, well, that might be, but then let's talk about the underlying financial problem, and the funding system is broken and we need to fix it so rural schools can get the support they need, so that students who are in impoverished districts can get the support they need. I said, Tom, that is what the Democratic Party is putting forward. There's so much confusion in what's going on at the local and state levels in Wisconsin, because I truly believe over the last decades we've built government to be understandable by lawyers, consultants, and accountants, not the voters. And we want to use the state treasurer's office to take that publicly available information and make it publicly understandable, so the voters in Wisconsin understand what is going on in their communities and in their state, and then take that and make their choices off of that. Because like my friend Tom, who he and I all seem to agree on what we can do to fix school funding and EMS funding, because he knows, he's been in the room, and what we need is an effort in Wisconsin to bring transparency and government transparency into the 21st century so that every voter is in the room and able to be a partner and push on our common ideals. And I've got another example of how when we focus on our common ideals, we can get stuff done in Wisconsin. In November, school boards across the state were told that the special education funding that was promised in the state budget was going to come in 7% lower than was promised, months after students had been in the doors, in the classrooms. That was hundreds of millions of dollars across the state that were just blown a hole in school budgets across the state. When we heard that in our school district, we got to work. And we drafted an emergency resolution to go to the statewide convention of school boards, calling on the state to be a dependable partner for our local leaders. And after a hard-fought debate of bringing people together on that shared ideal of supporting students who need those special education services, we got 93% of the voting school boards to agree with us to make that statement and to stand up for our communities. 93% means we got folks from urban school districts and rural school districts, the liberal school districts and the conservative ones on the same page, saying this is a Wisconsin value. This is what we care about. This is the future of our kids. When we can cut through that confusion, push past that division, we have a pathway forward in Wisconsin. So that's why we're not only working to flip the assembly, flip the Senate, push through on the governor's race, but we're working for a clean sweep in Wisconsin, because we have to get to work rebuilding trust in our communities, making sure folks have a clear understanding of what is going on so that we can see where we agree and move forward. So my name is Dylan Helmenstine. I'm running to be the next Wisconsin State Treasurer. I would love to earn your vote August 11th, and then November after that, we're all going to be working hard for that trifecta, and I would love to take some questions if you have any.
The 7%. I'm not saying name names, but like, what were the reason for not supporting that?
We know in Wisconsin that there have been some school boards who got captured by a national movement of Moms for Liberty and some folks who got through. Now, I will also say that vote didn't take specific school district names, so I can't tell you who's 7%. But there have been district after district where a Moms for Liberty majority got on, and then very swiftly after that, the voters in those communities realized these are not folks who are fighting for our kids' futures. They're fighting for a national political agenda that is not serving our community. So we have seen in Waukesha School Board, in Watertown School Board, these are places where, it's not blue bastions, although Alicia Helmenstine did win the mayor's race in Waukesha. Yes, exactly. These are places where, again, even folks who might be on the other side of the aisle on us on a lot of things, they have seen that political agenda doesn't serve their communities. So that 7%, it's a strong minority, and I think that if we give it a few more years and we would have taken that vote, it would have been 100%. Thanks, Ann.
I think
Pat?
what you said about not understanding referendums,
That's why the school did not pass.
Sure.
People said, that's not what it said.
Yeah.
That's the way it's worded.
they voted against it. But they didn't understand they were voting wrong.
Pat was making the point, I'm just saying it into the mic in case anybody's on, that these referenda questions are so confusing a lot of the times that might be why people vote against them, right? And even then, we had an overwhelming win for Chris Taylor across the state. So cheers to everybody who knocked on doors for her, right? Yeah, it was overwhelming. We saw places even in southwest Wisconsin where more people voted for Chris Taylor in a spring election than went and voted in the presidential election for the Democratic candidates for president. So that means people changed their minds. It means that people are disagreeing with this chaos, right, that we are seeing from the national government. And I think that also we are hitting a point where folks who support public education can't take another hike in their property taxes. And they see those confusing referenda question and they can't connect the dots on how a no vote then hits their community. And I know of communities like Hustisford or Brillion or now even Portage having to close elementary schools where that starts a downward spiral, right? But it's hard to connect the dots on those when the referenda questions are so confusing. Now, fundamentally, we shouldn't be governing our schools by referendum. We should be having a stable funding system where the state is making sure that students anywhere in the state are getting a quality education, because that's what our Constitution calls for, and it's time for us to follow that promise again for students everywhere in the state of Wisconsin. Thank you, Pat. I saw Colleen over there.
What do you think about the movement to list the amount of money going on public schools funds for vouchers, like they did in Green Bay?
Laura, Mark, Jeanette, the Green Bay School Board members I know well, and they have done really incredible work. So Colleen is talking about getting on the property tax bills that everybody gets in January a separate line that breaks out the amount of property tax you're paying for the voucher payments that aren't going to your public school. Now, folks just see that line and they think, oh my gosh, how have the property taxes gone up that much in just 1 year? And they will attribute it to a referendum. They will attribute it to poor management of your finances as a community, when it's completely out of the control of your local school board. So it is a critical step that we need to do, that Colleen is talking about, of transparency for Wisconsin voters, so they understand that when the property tax goes up from those voucher payments, it's there separated from what your local school board is doing, because it's not in their control, and we need that in every single school district. We need that in every single community. Colleen, do you want to follow up with something?
Well, right now, communities are doing that community by community by community. Is there anything the treasurer's office could do?
So my mission as treasurer is to work in the grassroots form to make sure every school board knows it's an option, and we can follow Green Bay, as many others are, to get that separation out, and then also to advocate as a treasurer's statewide position to the legislature and governor, who will be Democrats come January 4th, that is a step in the right direction. Because what I was talking to Bill about is what we have seen. The Democratic Party is the party of government transparency. The Democratic Party is the party of good, fair, clean use of our tax dollars. For what Connie was saying, we are here to help each other, right? And that's why everybody in this room is here. That's why I got into public service. The Democratic Party is the one standing for those values, and I think that the trifecta is going to be interested in making sure we have transparency in those programs. Dick, and then I'll be done, Jim, unless that's all right. Okay, Dick.
Actually, I was just going to ask about the same thing. A little bit broader, do you see any path or any way that we can actually reverse the voucher school program in Wisconsin?
So one of the crisis points that we are in is that there used to be a cap on how many students from a school district could receive voucher payments. It was 10%. This year, going into the next school year, there will no longer be a cap. So there is no longer a control over how many students could receive those voucher payments. There's no longer a cap on how much a local community could be expected to raise its own property taxes to fund its public school to finance those voucher payments. That is an impending crisis, my friends. I mean, that is something we will not see rolling out until this upcoming school year, and unfortunately a lot of folks don't know that. These are the ways the laws are written that are really pitting us against each other, dividing us, and setting our communities up for failure. I think that these questions about the voucher program are the ones that I get almost the most everywhere in the state. And I think that folks are going to realize that you should have the choice to send your child where you want to for their education, but that cannot come at the expense of our public schools, which are there to serve every single student, not discriminating against them, sending anybody away. This is our obligation, and your family's choice, we respect it. It cannot come at the expense of all of the rest of the students and families in our community, and that movement is strong in Wisconsin. So, thank you, my friends. I do have some signature papers if you're willing to sign, but I really appreciate the chance to talk, and Jim, thank you very much. I appreciate it. you.